Video started circulating today on social media of Kasich on the campaign trail. I believe he was in Northern Virginia. And he made a remark about a time that he seemed to be referring to nostalgically, maybe even recently, when women came out of the kitchens to campaign for him. And that included a remark from an audience member that while she was supporting him, she didn't really like that. So it's a 22-second video, and it seemed to show that it was, again, John Kasich being hostile to the idea of working women.
How did I get elected? I didn't have anybody for me. We just got an army of people who, and many women who left their kitchens to go out and go door to door and to put yard signs up for me all the way.
First off, I want to say your comment earlier about the women came out of the kitchen to support you. I'll come to support you, but I won't be coming out of the kitchen.
I got you.
So there was plenty of reaction to it. It was not positive for the most part. And then we learned that really was, I think, a terribly unfair representation of what John Kasich had actually said. Here is the part that was edited out when they got out of what Kasich was saying and then edited to the question. Here's what Kasich said next. Gives it much more proper context.
How did I get elected? I didn't have anybody for me. We just got an army of people who, and many women who left their kitchens to go out and go door to door and to put yard signs up for me all the way back when, things were different. Now you call homes and everybody's out working, but at that time, early days, it was an army of the women that really helped me to get elected to the state senate.
That's a completely different thing that he said.
Right.
Now, I mean, not super artful, and probably could have used, now thankfully women work if they want to, and but his point was not. He was just saying, hey, he was attempting to appeal to women by saying, hey, man, I had a lot of women stop what they were doing at a time when women didn't work and come out. Now women work. I don't know. By itself is not does not mean you're hostile to women.
Right. And there's just a sort of thematically, we seem to have been, again, it's an edited video that we're talking about today.
Right.
And again, it's South Carolina is often, I know we've moved on from South Carolina, but is often the kind of the nadir in terms of fair play. And anything goes, and so maybe this is mild by comparison, but it is disingenuous and mendacious, to say the very least, and horribly misrepresentative of his views. Now that's and clearly it's skewed to paint him in a very unfavourable, unsavoury light. That having been said, his views, and we're going to come on to this, I know, but his views on He's always seen as the Republican moderate, right?
Yeah, well, right, comparatively, right.
But that's what's so troubling, because comparatively, in terms of abortion, his views are moderate by
comparison to like Marco Rubio, for example, right?
Correct, because he has this exceptions, and the exceptions mark him out as a moderate. Which is just spectacular. I mean, which is just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, it's been a campaign where our focus on Donald Trump and the insane things that he has said, including what he said today, for a long time made Ted Cruz seem palatable. Just again, because of the way we talk about things. Well, he's a senator, and he's not yelling at the top, he's not insulting people, and he's not saying that we should throw all Muslims out of the country in the way Donald Trump is, so he must be okay. Whereas Ted Cruz is every bit as...
I find Ted Cruz far more troubling than I find Donald Trump.
So do I.
Because he means what he says. Donald Trump half the time is a blowhard that will say whatever it is to pull focus. He plays the media beautifully. Well, I don't mean that to advocate any of his views, but he plays it like a Stradivarius. And he will say whatever it takes to pull that focus.
Right.
And he doesn't. He dials back, and his tactic has been throughout this campaign: say something really outrageous and then dial it back and say, "Well, no, you kind of misunderstood what I meant. When I said I want to exclude all Muslims, I meant we should really vet them." And he kind of distances himself from a very outrageous policy decision. I can't believe that half of these things that he really says he either believes, has any intention of trying to action or execute. If he were,
we don't know. You're right. We don't
know. But Ted Cruz is stone cold sober when he says the types of things that he says. He wants to eviscerate and carpet bomb whole swathes of Syria and Iraq. I have no doubt that is 100% what he wants to do.
I think you're right. I just think that that nonetheless, the way the thing gets covered, the extreme nature of those first Trump statements have the effect of moderating everyone else, even though it's madness.
Undoubtedly.
And it somewhat applies here to Kasich, because here's the story. Elliot's going to tell you more in a moment, but like, this is the story that came out today. I don't know, you probably can't see it, but it says moderate John Kasich just defunded Planned Parenthood in Ohio. So while we defend Kasich here for a video about women that was misrepresentative of what he said, this is a guy who yesterday, Sunday, as we knew he was going to do, defunded Planned Parenthood in Ohio.
Yeah, and since becoming governor in 2010, he has signed every measure restricting abortion that has come across his desk. And it comes back to, again, you ask yourself the question why, and it comes back to as we know, but it bears just thinking about. It comes back to abortion, and it comes back to the 97% of what Planned Parenthood does is about women's health. There is 3% of what they do is abortion, and it gets bundled in together. And as a result, seemingly no right-thinking Republican, and I'd say that with air quotes, no right-thinking Republican could ever advocate Planned Parenthood for those reasons.
That's
so
right.
ignoring all of that. So he has systematically, in spite of, and just to pick up on what you were saying, in spite of his more measured tone, since becoming, this goes back in 2011, he signed a law banning abortion after 20 weeks. In 2013, his budget included a long list of anti-abortion measures. So it has been systematic, and he's done it very, very quietly. And he has been able to, he pivots when asked and when quizzed on it. He has pivoted. When he gets into Super Tuesday states, he's going to find it less easy to pivot in that way, because they want their kind of anti-abortionists loud and proud. They don't like the kind of that model. It doesn't play well in some of those states. They need to be more militant. But for now, he's quietly signing these bills and has a very aggressive stance.